Every now and then we'll get an email or a message from someone who's trying to troubleshoot a recipe that they're making. Hey, I'm trying to make whatever dish, but I'm having some trouble with it. And probably 9 times out of 10, there is one ingredient that is the culprit, and that is the flour they're using. So that's what we're here to talk about, flour. It's such a basic, simple ingredient, but it's really a much more complicated topic.
People think that all the flour is the same. No, this is a very big mistake.
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot of people out there, understandably, were like I was until I learned a little bit more about flour. You probably tend to cook with just all-purpose flour. Maybe if you get really adventurous, you try a little bread flour, but only to cook bread because the package says bread on it. So that means that it's only for bread, right? But then maybe you start watching Pasta Grammar or getting into, say, Italian food, and then you learn about 00 flour. What the heck is 00 flour? Well, we're gonna dive into all of that, including some very sneaky marketing tactics that flour companies use to trick you and steal your money. So without further ado, let's get into probably the single biggest question that people come to us asking about flour. What the heck is 00 flour? And sort of on the same side, what is all-purpose flour? I say that because often in some of our own recipes, we will tell people to use all-purpose flour and 00 flour interchangeably. But the terms 00 and all-purpose refer to 2 completely different things.
So 00 flour is a flour that is common in Italy. It's made out of soft wheat, and 00 indicates how fine is the flour. So you have this very fine flour with no the skin, no the kruska, I don't know how do you call it, no the exterior part, nothing, just the inside, and it's very thin, it looks like dust.
And there are other kinds of flour. For instance, here we have a Tipo Zero, type 0, which is not quite as fine as 00. Here we have a
number 1.
Type Tipo Uno, type 1, which is even more coarse.
And then in Italy you find also Tipo 2, Tipo 3, because
at a certain point it just turns into gravel. That's type 5. Now, let's get to all-purpose flour, which is something that you won't find in Italy. I'm not even sure how widespread, let us know. If you're from a country I'm just used to America and Italy. We have a lot of all-purpose flour in America. If you live in, say, England or Canada or Australia, I don't know. Do you call flour all-purpose flour? Let us know. But what that term refers to is not the fineness, not how it's ground, but the protein content. So this King Arthur flour, just for reference, is 11.7% protein, and that's what it means. And we'll come more to protein content in a little bit and what that signifies. But 00 fineness, all-purpose protein content. So why will you see in some Pasta Grammar recipes us say that you can use 00 flour or all-purpose flour?
For some recipes, actually, they are completely interchangeable.
Yeah, particularly in the case of making pasta, fresh egg pasta, which is something that people make a lot of. You can pretty much use either.
Also, the all-purpose flour is a flour that you can use, for example, to make the pie crust. What we use in Italy to make the pie crust is actually 00 flour.
So you pasta, pie crust, cookies.
Dessert in general, you make it with 00 flour or all-purpose flour. You want like a pie, a crostata, you want a cookie, you want to make the sponge cake, usually you use the 00 flour, or in America, the all-purpose flour.
You'll notice that all of those things Ava listed do not involve a lot of rising. There is a reason for that. And we'll come back to that.
But Harper, you and all our friends needs to keep in mind that 00 all-purpose flour is not the right flour for every kind of pasta.
Sure.
Because sometimes we need another kind of flour. But before we talk about that, a quick word from today's video sponsor.
So a little something about myself. I am a bit of a watch geek. And before you ask, no, you do not need to have Rolex money in order to afford beautiful watches. Which brings me to today's video sponsor, Holzkern. Holzkern is a watch and jewelry brand from Vienna, Austria. They make beautiful stuff for both men and women, which is why you should check them out if you are looking for a gift for someone special. I have been looking for a watch for Ava for so long, but we have very different taste in watches, and she didn't like any of the ones that I found until she saw this watch from Holzkern. They specialize in using natural materials for all of their watches and jewelry. Stone, freshwater pearls, all kinds of incredible woods, gemstones like amethyst and jade, even stuff like peacock feathers. Ava really liked the natural wood of her watch, but also when you gift someone a watch, it gives you an excuse to gift a watch to yourself, which I did with this little beauty. It's beautiful. It uses a Citizen automatic movement that I actually have in several other watches that I own and love. Because they use natural products, every single watch or piece of jewelry that you get from Holzkern will be unique. Plus, they're made in small quantities, so they maintain the strictest standards of quality. They offer free express shipping from beautiful Vienna. If you order before February 7, all orders are guaranteed to arrive by Valentine's Day. Gentlemen, do not forget about Valentine's Day. If you're looking for a great gift, then click the link down in the description below. If you use our discount code, you will get 15% off your order, plus a free gift bag. A big thank you to Holzkern for sponsoring today's video. As we said before the break, if you make egg fresh pasta, typically what you'll use is 00 flour, or you can change that with all-purpose flour. However, most pasta is not egg pasta. We've talked about this in previous videos. I can put a link up here if you want to learn all about fresh pasta. Most pasta that you buy, let's say you go into a store and you get your package of spaghetti or rigatoni or penne or something, that is not egg pasta. That is pasta that is made with just flour and water. If you want to make pasta with just flour and water, what happens if you use 00 or all-purpose flour?
You will end up having a mappazzone. Because pasta made just with water and 00 flour is not pasta. And actually in Italy it's not pasta by the law, because there is a law where requires to make pasta and to call it pasta to use just semolina flour.
I'm sorry, but just water pasta.
See, water pasta, which is, okay, I know that people, when they think about pasta...
We're trying to simplify this, I promise.
No, but it's like here there is a little bit of upside down of the situation. And just to be clear once for all, what we call pasta, when we refer to pasta in Italy, we refer to a product made with semolina flour and water. That is pasta. Then we have the exception of pasta, that is egg fresh pasta, which use eggs. But the pasta in general is semolina flour and water.
00 flour or all-purpose flour, that very soft, fine flour made with, as you said, a very soft wheat. It needs that egg in order to hold it together into pasta. That's why if you make pasta with that flour, it's going to be egg pasta. But if you want to make pasta, normal pasta with just flour and water, as Ava said, you need semolina flour, or as you will see it called in Italian, semola.
Semolina flour is the flour that comes from grano duro, which is durum wheat.
So a different kind of wheat.
It's a different kind of wheat. So you have this durum wheat that is stronger, it has a higher protein content, and this is perfect to make pasta. Now, this kind of flour, this kind of wheat grows very well in hot climate. That's why in the south of Italy we tend to use more durum wheat than soft wheat. While in the north of Italy, where the egg fresh pasta comes from, they grow much more the soft wheat, and that's why they use they found a trick to make the pasta with soft wheat because this is what they had, and they added an egg to make pasta. That's why you have those two big differences.
Yeah, so semolina, if you make a dough out of semolina pasta, the actual gluten structure from that kind of wheat will be much more firm. So that's why you're able to just mix it with water, for instance, and make all kinds of shaped pastas with it, like cavatelli or...
Cavatelli, rigatoni, spaghetti, bucatini, macarona, fettuccine, linguine, troffie, I don't know, fusilli. All the pasta shape that you can imagine you can make with semolina and water.
There's a reason why egg fresh pasta, you almost never see any kind of shapes made with it. It's just like sheet or noodle pasta because it won't really hold a shape. For instance, if you've ever made a garganelli, which is sort of like a penne made with egg fresh pasta, it won't hold its tube shape. It kind of flops down. It's a good pasta, like that's what it's meant to do, but it will never hold a tube like a semolina pasta would.
Let's put on aside another exception that we have in the south of Italy, because we do pasta with flour, semolina flour and water. But if we want to go fancy, we use also semolina flour and egg to make the egg fresh pasta.
And that sort of touches on a point of why you might choose one or the other in cases where they are interchangeable. So like if you make tagliatelle pasta, which is an egg pasta, if you make it in the northern style with 00 flour, it will be much more soft, much more smooth and sort of refined. But if you make it with semolina flour, how they often do in the south, it'll be much more firm and chewy and kind of rustic feeling. And it's just a matter of taste, which you like. Personally, I really like the semolina flour, I'm not gonna lie.
I like more the semolina
like
flour
pasta that you
too,
can really bite, but
for example, my mom, she doesn't like the semolina version, she likes more the northern version, so it's just about the taste.
Just a matter of taste. But there are other things, for instance, like because semolina flour is not just for pasta. For instance, there are like breads and cakes that you can make for it, but what they all will share in common is a much more kind of rustic feel, almost like
I don't want to say that you can taste the flour, but the taste is more earthy, more stronger than the 00 flour. You can feel the consistency that is different. You can feel the flavor that is different than 00.
Another thing that semolina flour is good for is it's a very good dusting flour in cases where you don't want it to be absorbed by the dough. For instance,
when you make pizza, because the dough doesn't absorb the semolina flour. The semolina flour is harder, so it takes time actually to create a dough.
And I've made this mistake before. If you're ever making pizza and you're using a pizza peel, if you dust the pizza peel with 00 flour, usually the flour that you use to make the pizza dough, it just absorbs so quickly into the dough that pizza is just gonna stick right on that pizza peel. Whereas if you use semolina flour, it works a bit more like how some people use cornmeal for sliding pizzas off. It doesn't stick into the dough, and so it just helps the pizza slide right off. So it's good for that kind of stuff. Speaking of pizza, it's time to get into the bigger topic that really seems to give people a hard time and ruin a lot of people's favorite food, whether it's bread, whether it's pizza, whether it's focaccia, whether it's panettone. And that is protein content in flour. Now, just to explain really quick, the protein content we're talking about is a percentage of how much protein, measured usually in grams, there is in the flour. In theory, the way that you would figure this out, because not all brands show the protein content by percentage right on the front there, you should be able to calculate that using the nutritional facts on the back. However, they round everything up or down to the nearest gram, and a gram in this case can make a big difference. For instance, this flour says 11.7%, and it has 4 grams of protein per 30 grams of flour. Now, if you do the math, that equals 13.3% protein, which is clearly not what this is. This flour, which is 12.5%, has the same measurements. 4 grams of protein in 30 grams of flour. So in theory, if you were to just do it off the nutritional label, these would be exactly the same, but they're not, as they clearly tell us, and as the results demonstrate over and over again.
The protein in a flour indicates how to make the things very, very easy to understand, how stretchy your dough can be, how much water your dough can actually keep and absorb.
The longer it can ferment?
Absolutely, yes, and more gluten will develop. So, if you want to make a cookie or a cake, for example, you don't want too much gluten in your cake. Think about the pie crust. Usually you need just to assemble the dough. You don't have to work, because otherwise you are developing gluten and you don't have that crumble pie crust that everyone loves. So you will have a chewy pie crust. And this means also that the flour you are going to use for this kind of preparation is a flour that has a protein content between 9% and 11.5%.
Which is essentially all-purpose flour. But then what happens if, as we've seen many times, someone finds a Neapolitan pizza recipe and they want to make their high hydration pizza dough that they ferment for 24 hours, but they use an all-purpose flour?
They will end up in having a disaster because in order to make the real Napolitan pizza, you need a flour that have a protein content that can go between 12.5 13, maybe 13.5%. That is the perfect ratio of protein content for a pizza flour. This gives you the opportunity to incorporate in your flour the right amount of water. That can be 60, 65, 70% of water. It can give you the chance to let your dough ferment up to 24 hours. So that is the right amount of hours to have the most amazing pizza that you can imagine. If you do with all-purpose flour, you will end up having a very acidic dough that doesn't stretch properly, and you will end up having a disaster.
So that's when, if you start to find these pizza flours that have, this one is 12.5%. This is also where sometimes in the past especially, we have recommended, if you don't have access to like a specific pizza flour with a higher protein content, at least using bread flour. Bread flour has a slightly higher protein content than all-purpose. It really just sort of depends on the brand, but often a bread flour will be in that 12.5, 13%. So sometimes that's a good option for pizza. Let's say you want to make like panettone.
Now, if you are so crazy that you want to make a panettone, but actually, if you want to make what in Italy we call gran lievitato, which is usually a dessert that is made with a lot of fat, and for fat I mean eggs, I mean butter, I mean also with some liquid that can be milk, that can be water. In that case, you need the highest protein content that you can find in a flour. And we are talking about at least 15-16% of protein content.
For instance, this flour here is, 15.5% protein. This is Manitoba flour, which you like to use a lot, right?
I like to use a lot because with the Manitoba flour you can actually play around and make several things. For a brioche it works very well. For a baba, the delicious Napolitan baba, it works very, very well. I use the Manitoba also when we make our pizza tomo, because I don't do the Napolitan, I don't have the wood oven to make make Napolitan pizza, so I make an high hydration dough.
Which is what we recommend if, for instance, you get our cookbook and you see the pizza recipe. We actually recommend for home cooks using a higher protein flour because you'll have better luck if you don't have like a really big pizza oven.
And that is a flour, as there is written, that has 15.5% of protein content, which means that can absorb as much water as you want.
Speaking of good pizza dough, do not be fooled by some companies who will make a flour that they say is a pizza flour, even boldly claiming that it is a Neapolitan pizza flour. Just yesterday, when I went to the store to pick up some good old King Arthur all-purpose flour for this video, I found this new flour that King Arthur is making, and it's this like pizza flours. It says 00 pizza flour, but if you read that label correctly, even accounting for the fact that they round up the protein content reading the label, it was a lower protein content than their own all-purpose flour. So that is a horrible flour to use for pizza. So just because someone says that some flour is made for pizza
doesn't mean that's
the case. Basically, I think to sum it up, kind of the crazier you need your dough to act, the more protein you need. So if you're making pasta or a pie crust, your dough doesn't need to do anything crazy. So you can go with the all-purpose flour, a relatively low protein flour. But if you need something to and rise and do crazy stuff and maybe incorporate a lot of fat into it like a panettone, that's when you need to bust out the really high protein stuff. Now, we did want to illustrate how important this is because we tell people all the time, go out and look for this high protein flour. And we did want to actually back this up with an example. We're not just trying to waste your money or something on expensive flours. And so my idea was like, oh, well, let's make pizza, one with like normal flour and one with a high protein flour. But as Ava pointed out, sometimes on camera, it can be difficult to tell the texture of pizza dough just by seeing it. You got to really taste it and feel it. But she did think of something that might be a better, more visual example. Should we give it a shot?
Absolutely, Amber.
Okay, Eva, do you want to explain what we have here?
So in front of us we have two dough that they are used to make what we call focaccia di Recco. This is made with the Manitoba flour, which means that the flour has a higher gluten content, water, olive oil, and salt. This is the same recipe, the only difference is that I made this with all-purpose King Arthur flour.
Interestingly, you can already feel the difference. The all-purpose flour feels very, very soft, and this is much firmer.
Yes, because the high gluten flour absorbs the water in a very specific way.
Okay, so you're starting with the Manitoba dough?
I start with the Manitoba dough so you can actually see how it should be. You can already feel how elastic is this dough. So, one of the ways in which they stretch the dough to make the focaccia di Recco is something like that. The dough for this kind of focaccia needs to be very, very thin. And as you can see, you have here a very, very elastic dough. You can stretch as you want because it doesn't break so easily.
It's the kind of thing where when someone sees you doing this, it looks like it's a really hard and difficult skill.
Absolutely not.
But I've done it. It's almost like a magic trick. Like
it's all about the flour. You can keep stretching because it's all here, as you can see. For example, when you see all those pizza chefs that flip the pizza in the air, they are using a very high protein flour because in that case the dough should be very, very elastic.
You're not even like really trying that hard to not break it or anything. You're just literally pulling it and it just stretches. Yeah, you can see through it. Should we try the King Arthur flour?
Absolutely, yes. That's why we are here, to show how with the other one this is not possible.
I don't want to rag on King Arthur too much. It's not like specifically King Arthur. It's just that that's the most popular brand of all-purpose flour.
Yes, it's because this kind of flour doesn't work like this, not because it's bad. Same amount of flour, same amount of water, and this is already, you feel that there is something wrong here. And now we can start. See, because this is what happens. I'm not doing anything different than before. I'm not putting too much pressure. I'm doing what I did before, but as you can see, this is already destroyed. You see here that is not elastic like the other one. I can't do too much because while the other didn't break at all. You see me?
I just realized that we've been through all of this and we've really only talked about wheat flour because there are many other kinds of flours out there.
There are so many flour that we didn't touch.
All these specialty flours, like, oh, what was that one you used?
Buckwheat flour.
Buckwheat flour and all this
Rye
stuff.
flour.
Let us know.
Almond flour.
We'll call it a day there,
flour.
but let us know if we should do a video on like more exotic other different types of flour. Speaking of other kinds of flour, one of our favorite to use is almond flour, and that's exactly what this pasta grammarian used to make pasta di mandorla.
Which are made without any wheat flour. They are completely gluten-free, and this person made an amazing job because they look, and I'm sure they are very, very good.
By the way, if you're curious about that focaccia di racco that Eva made the dough for, I'll put the recipe for that down below. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Ciao.
Ciao.